What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovcik. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health, and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
All right, everybody, this is In Liberty and Health, episode number 103. I think I got that. Your less frequent programming of all things Jack, Tan, and Liberty. I got John Odermatt returning to the show with me. He was in my first 20, if not the first 10 guests. Yeah, dude, how you doing?
Good to be back, man. I didn't realize it was that long ago when we talked the first time. Or maybe you're just recording a shit ton of podcasts.
Yes. Yes and yes. I started back in October. I think you were on November, December. And I've done, this is the 103rd that I've done. So I've been rocking and rolling a little bit. And after 100, I was kind of like, all right, we're going to just kind of take it a little easy. So, as they schedule, they come out, and that's it, man.
Yeah, that's the game. I think I'm up to 330 something, but for my entire time podcasting, it's always been just once per week. I don't think I've ever done, except maybe around different LP events. Maybe I've done like two in a week or something. But basically, it's once a week, every week for the past 5 years or something crazy. Yeah.
Holy hell. Yeah. I can't even imagine what I'm going to feel like when I've been doing podcasts for a year, because it's only been about 7-8 months for me now. And it just feels like the time just gone in an instant. Yeah. So the first time you were on, we kind of talked about the libertarian stuff and a little bit of your podcast as well. But this time I was just on your show about a month ago now, which feels like it was just yesterday, but that kind of shows how much shit's going on. We didn't really talk about a lot of health stuff the first time you were on, so I figured I'd bring you back on. We could kind of shoot the shit about some of the health stuff in your life, because I see you promote some of the, I think it's gut supplements and stuff like that, and you're always posting up your runs. So I was just kind of curious about your philosophy for health, because you were a bigger guy too at one point, correct?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give you a quick backstory on me. So when I was younger, I was always in pretty decent shape, played football growing up, lifted weights.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you're 6'8" tall too. I didn't realize how tall you were until we hung out at the LP convention. I saw you, I think, at the 2021, and I'm like, oh, I think that's John. And then we finally met, and I'm like, wow. I'm 5'11", 6 foot, and I'm like,
yeah, I'm 6. At least I used to be 6'5". I think I'm still 6'5", about there. But one of the tallest libertarian podcasters.
Yeah, well, I think you might even have a few inches on Dave Smith, because I think he's 6'2", 6'4", something like that. So yeah, you might be there.
I think I've said this before, but Dave has me in arm length. If you look at the guy when he's up there at the podium giving speeches, he's got monkey arms.
Yeah, if anybody talking shit, you could
just slap him in the audience. It's good being a comedian. You can just talk back, just slap him from the stage.
Slap the hecklers. I'm sure. I'm sure, especially him. I'm sure he gets them. But I'm sure you can handle him. So, anyways, you were always kind of a sports-oriented person. Then I think you were kind of getting that.
Yeah. So I played football and basketball growing up, and stayed in shape. Was always very active. But like most people back in the 90s, you just I ate pretty healthy considering the times. My mom was a health teacher and a physical education teacher, so we followed the the food pyramid pretty much. 15 servings of grains, and but we ate pretty well. All things considered. I mean, I did, have, when I was in high school, if you're running late for, getting to school, you have a Pop-Tart or one of those toaster strudels with the icing on top. But I was able to keep weight off because I was so active. I didn't really gain a lot of weight back then. It was easy to control. Then I went to college, and in college, you start drinking beer, and I kept working out, and things, my weight went up some, but it didn't, it didn't get out of control or anything at that point. It was after college when, you get that first job and you start getting in basically that sedentary lifestyle where, you go to work. Even my first job, I was even on my feet a lot of the time. But just, I guess getting older and my eating habits started to catch up to me. I just started to pack on the pounds, and it happened so slowly that I'd never even realized it.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was, in my prime, I guess in high school, I was like 215, but I was a muscular 215. And then as I gained weight, I got up at my heaviest, which was like 3 or 4 years ago. I was probably close to 250. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize like that I was even that heavy and what it felt like to be that heavy until I started to lose the weight. And I was like, holy shit, that was, I mean, it really, like, just moving around, trying to play basketball, trying to go for a run, it made everything more difficult. And the aches and the pains, and just like, I've posted pictures like my before and after, from starting to focus on my health, starting to focus on working out more, really getting a solid supplement routine, and just the inflammation in my face change.
Mm-hmm.
It's just remarkable. But that's basically my story in a nutshell. And I mean, honestly, even since the last time I talked to you, like, I've just kind of developed this attitude where I'm so fascinated by just learning more about supplements and the human body, and the history of really how we've been lied to by our government and corporations,
Mm-hmm.
and seed oils and all this bullshit. And it feels like I'm learning something new almost every single day.
Yeah, and this is something that I've been incredibly passionate about. And it's funny that you said you got up to 250 pounds, and you're, like I said, a decent bit taller than me. I was 250 at my heaviest, right? And I didn't realize, I always was under the impression, hey, I'm 250 pounds, but I lift weights, right? So I got to be healthy. So who cares? But I didn't realize, same deal as you, aches and pains, inflammation, how fat my face actually was. I put up old pictures of me on Twitter every here and there from like when I was playing in some of the old bands I used to play. And I'm like, man, I was a fat ass. But what's funny is that I lost that pretty much 70 pounds. Right now I usually hover around 185. And at 250 pounds, I was nowhere near as strong as I am now, because I'm a little bit. Yeah, sorry, my internet, it's raining here, and my internet can sometimes be a little shaky. It's been kicking me in the ass. But pretty much when I was 250, I thought I was healthy just because I worked out. And as it turns out, it's cliche, but you cannot out-train a bad diet. And I think a lot of people kind of breeze past that. I had a coworker a couple of months ago telling me, what the hell did he say? He said, oh, well, I feel like I can eat this Chick-fil-A because I work out, right? And meanwhile, he's got a gut that goes over his pants. And I'm not saying he's a bad person or there's anything inherently wrong with him, but he doesn't understand how much better he could feel. So I guess to kind of tie that up with a question, was it kind of like a night and day thing after you lost weight? You realized, like, holy crap, there's a huge disparity in how I feel now versus how I could feel?
Yeah. It was honestly adjusting my diet some and supplementing that after I lost, and the weight didn't like fall off for me, which is good. That's really the way you want to lose weight. You want to lose it slowly over time. Mm-hmm. And it was just as the pounds started to come off, I just started to get more and more active again. And I started going back when I was working in the office, every lunch break, I would go to the gym, instead of going, to, fast food or Chick-fil-A or Wendy's or something to get food. And it just built up from there. And like, I grew up in an athletic family. My sister was a runner. She was on a D1 scholarship to Auburn for cross country and track. And I always thought, being 6'5", that, you hear like, you're too big to be a runner. You can't run. You're too big to, actually go out there and run more than 2 miles. So I was like, put these limits on myself that, I'm just not the type of person that can run more than 2 miles, because my legs would start to hurt. My Achilles would start to hurt. And I noticed, like, after I changed my diet, I got things right and the weight was coming off. I forget. I honestly don't remember like what started it, but I was like, I think I'm gonna try running a little bit more. And I just noticed that like I didn't have any of the pains I used to have when I was younger.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that was related to changing my diet and just not having that inflammation there. Because I mean, inflammation, of course, I mean, sometimes your body needs inflammation. It's the way, fight infections and different things.
All right. Unfortunately, here in the wonderful state of Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania to be exact, we're having a little bit of connectivity issues. So John was kind of going on about why inflammation is necessary. And I think a lot of people who, when they talk about inflammation, kind of miss this part too, because inflammation is the body's response to a certain stimulus. So when you have an infection, or let's say you work out pretty hard, if you go for a long run and you're not used to it, then your body's going to need to inflame the muscles that you were using to encourage a stimulus to recover. So it's not always myopically focused on reducing inflammation. If you have a joint or something that's inflamed, then obviously you want to reduce that whatever way possible. But not all inflammation's bad, and an acute response isn't indicative of a long-term response either. So anyways, you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, you basically summed everything up there better than I could have myself, using the correct terminology. But yeah, and so I didn't really realize that a lot of my problems when I was getting back into, or previously before I lost weight and changed my diet and got my supplements right, and I started running more, and I realized, I was dealing with some chronic inflammation, and I mean, it's something that a lot of people deal with. And I was just thinking about this today, like, and we've talked about before, like, people we follow, influencers who are in their 40s and 50s who work out and are just beasts. But it has become, I mean, it's always been like viewed as a normal type of thing. You get over in your late 30s, you get in your 40s, that, you getting up off the couch is hard. There's those, you see like reels on Instagram with like, a dad getting off the couch, like, and his like wife, doing the impersonations. A couple of those are pretty funny I've seen recently. But yeah. I mean, that's how normalized that shit is. And it's normal to age in like just a beat up way. And that's not how our bodies are made to age. It goes back to what we were talking about before, with like how just screwed up the American diet has become. And sure, you can blame government somewhat, and of course they have plenty of fault in it, but I mean, also these mega corporations that have really just taken advantage of people and have, really just, I mean, there's whole think tanks and whole tremendous amounts of resources that go into just hijacking our palates with these just hyper palatable foods that get people addicted. I mean, I think we might have talked about this when you were on my show, but you look at like with like baby formula, they put high fructose corn syrup in baby formula. It's criminal, man. I mean, it is. You get this hyper sweet taste that they hijack the palate at that early age. Then you look at all the fruit drinks and all the crap that that they force on kids growing up. It's freaking criminal behavior, and we're seeing it we're seeing it manifest in young adults and people in their 30s and 40s who are dealing with diabetes and autoimmune diseases. That you look at even a generation in front of us, or 2 generations in front of us, they had none of that. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. They told us to take away all the butter because that was your grandmother's cooking source, or cooking oil, and then start using different cottonseed, rapeseed, and different seed oils to cook
margarine.
Stuff. Right. Yeah, like this stuff is not meant for human consumption, and they demonize fat. And then basically now, if you see low fat on almost any container, that's almost synonymous with high sugar, because fat is the most flavorable of the macronutrients. So you take that out, what do you replace it with? And if you want to do a low fat diet, that's okay. But once again, what are you replacing it with? Are you going to replace it with a ton of sugar and, highly processed carbohydrates? Then you're not making a good switch. And we know that animal products are incredibly important for a human diet, and those have been largely vilified over the last, almost 100 years. They're incredibly satiating, and their macronutrients are very, very well assimilated to our bodies. Same deal with the amino acids and everything. But that's been like the first thing that is demonized the most. It's so ingrained in our culture to think that that steak right there is going to give you a heart attack. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, and it's hard to get past that. And I interviewed a doctor a couple weeks ago on my show. Dr. Thomas Hemingway has a really cool podcast called The Modern Medicine Movement. I really highly recommend checking it out. But he'll dive in and just take these individual issues. And I was just listening to his recent podcast talking about soybeans, and really the problem with this this soy infiltration into U.S. diets, which really started back in like the 90s, maybe late 80s. It's not really the soybean itself. I mean, if you're eating edamame itself, if you're eating the actual soybean, or if you're eating like it in miso soup, where it's been, sort of broken down and made into, almost like probiotics. That's totally fine. But it's this like highly processed soybean oil and all these other things that are just all over the U.S. diet. I mean, I think the soy is the fourth most consumed, which would be, I think the top three would be wheat, corn, and God, what's the third? I'm forgetting. Wheat, corn. Anyway, those make up more than 50% of the American diet. So,
yeah, and one thing that you touched on this a little bit earlier with the baby formula stuff, but I did this calculation a couple weeks ago, and I put out the tweet, and a lot of people seem to like it. But when you look at a can of Coke, right, that is 140 calories. You could eat a pound of strawberries for that, right? How long would it take you, and how full would you be if you ate a pound of strawberries versus what's the satiation and the nutrients that you get from drinking a Coke, right?
Yeah.
And we wonder why everybody is so obese, because you'll never be full drinking a 140 calorie Coke versus strawberries, which are very, they're full. It's basically just water and fiber, and they taste great, but once again, nobody's going out of their way to eat strawberries. Everybody's drinking these Cokes, these 2 liters of pops full of high fructose corn syrup, and it's just not satiating, but you're adding on so much extra energy into your diet without getting anything for that energy. And that's a huge problem. And no one ever really seems to kind of focus on that. And it's just like the processing of foods that make them so easy to consume is such a big issue.
That's a really great point, comparing, drinking a can of Coke to eating, a bunch of fruit and looking at the calories. I mean, personally, I think, and I know people have success with counting calories and really zeroing in on their macros. For me, I don't look at calories at all. Sure. I mean, I'll look a little bit, I try to consume, 120 grams of protein, and maybe a little more than that per day. It's something that recently my wife started focusing on more, and it's helped her a lot too. And I mean, I just don't see like really the benefit in counting calories just for that reason you're talking about, because what is in the calories? What are the macro micronutrients that are making up those calories? And then when you get down to it, burning calories, I mean, our bodies burn calories very differently. I mean, somebody who's in very poor metabolic health, who's, maybe overweight, or, maybe they're on a very calorie restricted diet, and it has their metabolism really lowered down, and they're not just going to burn calories the same way that somebody who's in good metabolic health is going to burn calories. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's tied into it when it comes to gut health and how your body is actually processing what you eat and how nutrients are being absorbed, just to zero in on calories to me. And, I'm sure there's somebody, with degrees that could come on and explain to me why calories matter, and I'm wrong. And they might have some great points, but to me, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, and there's nothing wrong with viewing that at all. And I didn't count for a long time. I just have specific physique goals, and I like to try to include some stuff that it may be a little bit more calorically dense to have a little bit more leeway, because I found, and I think I spoke about this a little bit when I was on your show, when I did carnivore, the problem was that I would binge, right? Because I'd be so restrictive, and then when it was time to let loose, I let loose. So I find that if I can have maybe something here or there, and not like I'm gorging on cheesecake every night, but let's say maybe something sweet just every here and there sprinkled in throughout the week, it's a lot more sustainable for me, and it keeps me in a little bit better of a headspace than just keeping everything out of there. And once again, that's just for me. I never try to boil diet down to this is the one size fits all approach, because I think we all know there is no one size fits all approach for diet. But I think we all generally agree that you should probably try to include as many whole foods as possible, get rid of the freaking seed oils, get rid of the processed fats and processed carbohydrates, and you'll probably be a majority of the way there. So I guess that was a good segue, though, into your focus on the gut, because this has been something that I try to put my finger on every here and there, but there's like so many different strings to pull on. And it's such an interesting thing, because your gut is more than just like the foods that you eat and the bacteria that develops. It also affects how your brain works, where inflammation may be channeled to your body. And there's just so many different cascading things that even a lot of the literature doesn't really bear out yet, but it's a whole like undiscovered field that really fascinates me. So I guess let's start off with what kind of got you interested in understanding the gut and kind of diving into that.
Well, I think going all the way back to like my initial interest in really supplements, where it kind of shifted to gut health, started with you ever listen to Tim Ferriss?
A little bit.
Tim Ferriss, he has a huge, massive podcast, but he wrote the 4-Hour Work Week and the 4-Hour Body, which really it's just breaking down simple ways to I think the diet he used was called like slow carb, but he actually, what I got into first through him was not like not full keto, but I got into just drinking bulletproof coffee every morning and noticing the difference of how that made me feel in the morning. Because I used to be someone who would drink coffee and pour a bunch of sugar in it, and you have this huge up, and then you come crashing down. So that just got me interested loosely in just like optimizing your health through supplements. And then my sister, who growing up with her our whole lives, she always struggled with IBS-D. So, you go out to a restaurant and she would always be running to the bathroom before, we get in the car to go home. And you can't, I think people who struggle with that, they kind of get used to it and they build their life around it. I know a lot of people who, struggle with it, and it just becomes a part of who you are. And there's nothing wrong with that. But she tried so many different things in order to, just reduce the symptoms. And in order to help it, she tried going full gluten-free. She tried cutting out dairy. She tried different probiotics. And then she found a probiotic that her neighbor across the street was using, which is the one that I use now. And her neighbor actually just gave her a bottle and she was like, "You have to try this. Like, I know it's going to help you." My sister's like, whatever. And so she takes the whole bottle throughout the month, and she didn't it's not like something where you realize like a day or two after there's a difference. She realized, we just went out to dinner and I didn't have to run to the bathroom. So something's changing. And that just continued. And essentially today she has no symptoms of IBS. And I mean, I've been lucky. I've never had to deal with IBS, but when I saw, that change able to occur through essentially just taking a supplement. And I talked about before, my sister is someone who has always worked out. She's a runner. She eats really well. And kind of what we were talking about before, where just because someone looks like they're in shape doesn't necessarily mean that internally, like, everything's right.
Right.
Different things contribute to that. But I think what it comes down to, and then, once I got on that same gut health regimen, that's really what kicked off for me my weight loss journey. And I think the key difference in the probiotic that I take and other probiotics is I think a lot of people view probiotics as just a numbers game. Well, let's just throw all this stuff down the hatch and hopefully some of this good bacteria sticks.
Yeah.
And this probiotic has an enzyme in it called chitosanase, which actually eats away at the candida in your gut. Candida is something that everybody has. It has a purpose. The purpose of candida is when you die, it helps your body to decompose. The problem is with our Western diet and sugar and all the crap we eat and artificial sweeteners, for a lot of people, it gets out of control. And I think one of the reasons why like elimination diets work so well in the beginning, especially, is because that candida gets kind of starved out. But unless you're doing an elimination diet like that, it's really hard you're not just going to get rid of candida just by throwing a ton of probiotics at it, or by throwing a ton of probiotic rich foods at it. You might feel a little bit better, but you're not going to feel a difference until you really clean that out. And the other thing that goes with a probiotic that has an enzyme like that is supplementing with enough magnesium that is going to pull water into your digestive tract to clear all that crap out of there. And I mean, I'm not talking about like colon cleanses and that type of stuff. I mean,
yeah,
maybe some people need that, but I think the vast majority of people do not need to go that route. But most people are deficient in magnesium. And I mean, there's a lot of different reasons for that. I'm trying to remember the article I was reading recently. There is a way that vitamin D and the lack of sunlight ties into our ability to absorb enough magnesium. I'm not going to try to speak on it because I can't remember the article exactly. But I mean, I would say those are two of the most important things that I think have helped me and help a lot of people, is a probiotic that actually attacks candida, one that is actually going to get to your digestive tract, and it's not going to be killed by your stomach acid. I think like a lot of the refrigerated probiotics probably don't even make it down to your gut because they have to be refrigerated. So what's going to happen when they go in your body? Your body's 98 degrees. A lot of them are
heats up pretty quick.
Bacteria is going to die. Yeah. So then the third thing would be, supplementing with magnesium, which I think everybody should do that.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that I'm currently cutting down body weight, and I had recently started supplementing with vitamin D, also conjugated linoleic acid, fish oil. And I do have like scallops and shrimp and some seafood pretty frequently. Mm-hmm. But honestly, since I'm supplementing with all this stuff and getting on a good supplement regimen, I do feel notably better. And especially, just as well as I do here in Pennsylvania, we like never see the sun for about 6 months out of the year. And it sucks because for me, I know when I'm in Florida or when it's a beautiful day outside and I can go outside in a tank top, shorts, kind of like I'm wearing now, and the sun's beating on my skin, I just always feel happy no matter what. It's like impossible for me to feel down. But that's because your body's, you're taking in vitamin D. So it's so important. And some people I think get the wrong idea about supplements, and it's not that should be the entirety of your existence and the entirety of your diet. You should get a lot of stuff from your diet, but in situations like ours where we don't get enough sun, then vitamin D may be important. I've always heard you should supplement with magnesium, and honestly, I'm not that well educated on the importance of magnesium, but it's something that I guess I should read up on a little bit more. But it's amazing how much stuff we miss in our modern day diet. And especially because we have this huge plant-based push, people are lacking B12. People are lacking vitamin D,
Mhm.
and a lot of people have low iron issues. So, and those things can be solved largely by eating animal products. And, once again, I don't want this podcast to sound like we're trying to shove supplements down people's throats, or we're
Yeah.
trying to encourage them to do any specific diet. But like, these are things to consider that have largely been kind of hidden from the mainstream narrative surrounding your health.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely feel the pain, obviously being Western PA with not seeing the sun. But we have been lucky, like the past month or so. It's been amazing weather for Western PA this time of year. It's been some hot days, but I mean, I'll take that over 50 degrees and raining all the time. But I mean, I think that a lot of this stuff I kind of talked about at the top. I'm learning more every day, but I think a lot of this stuff is tied together, wherein like you look at people using sunscreen and sunblock. People seem to burn so much easier, and we're told it's because the ozone layer is thinner.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that or not. I think it has more to do. Yeah, it is more to do with using this sunblock, and we're shielding our skin from really learning how to tan.
Right.
I mean, starting small with exposure. If you're in Western Pennsylvania in the spring, getting 10 or so minutes a day and building up from there. But also, like things like, being low in vitamin D, there is a interaction between vitamin D in the body and cholesterol. And I know, I'm going to cite another article I read, which I can't remember, but there is a correlation between using statin drugs to lower cholesterol and then getting sunburned more easily. And honestly, I've seen it happen with my dad. My dad is someone who, like, growing up, he was a guy that never ever sunburned. He was just someone that was whatever, go out, he'll be tan. I mean, he'll just go directly from pale to tan. Then as he's gotten older, and he had a heart scare a couple years ago, and they put him on statin drugs. We go to the beach now, and he's like the reddest guy on the beach. And it's like he's changed. He hasn't changed his diet really. I mean, he eats a little differently because of the heart problems. He eats a little bit better, but he's still kind of following the old advice of cardiologists, where they tell you to avoid red meat. Red meat. Red meat and salt and all that stuff. But it's crazy. And I think a lot of this stuff is tied together. And I wonder how much of it is intentional, just to make us less healthy.
Yeah, I sometimes think that there truly is malicious intent behind it, because red meat is one of the most satiating, satisfying, and delicious foods there is. And we've been eating it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I don't know if we talked about this when I was on your show, but I'm a big fan of this gut brain hypothesis, where just to kind of break it down real quick, in case anybody's not aware of what it is. Basically, when we learn to cook foods, and when we also learn how to develop like hunting tools, we actually started to sacrifice, we got rid of the gut, the distended belly that you see a lot of apes have. We sacrifice all that stomach for brain, because it's similar tissue. And because we were able to cook and eat meat and digest those, we didn't need all the gut to ferment the different fibers and grasses and plants and stuff like that to get fats out of the plant material. We were able to eat meat, and therefore we learned to stand upright, and we got more brain rather than gut. So I'm a big fan of the hypothesis, and to me it makes sense. And obviously it's just a hypothesis at this point, but to me it stands to reason, especially when you consider the physiology of how the amino acids in meat play very, very well with our bodies, because it's one of the most bioavailable sources of protein to us, behind eggs and whey. So yeah, I do believe there is a degree of intention behind telling people to go plant-based and low fat. And I'm not necessarily saying everybody should go keto and carnivore, but I don't think people should get rid of animal foods. And I don't think high blood pressure and high cholesterol is the lack of a statin, right? it's other life factors that are causing that.
Well, it's scary, because you'll hear, I've heard doctors say, well, they should just put statin drugs in the water. And, I mean, that would be a quick way for me to just stop drinking tap water altogether.
Mm-hmm.
I probably should anyway, but who knows what the hell else is in our water. But it's probably in the bottled water too. So I don't know what you do. You got to somehow find your own source of water.
Spring water.
This is the world we're coming to.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just to touch on what you were talking about, because I want to make this point as well. Like, yes, supplements, I do believe supplements are needed. But first and foremost, get as much as you can from whole foods. And even just the process, and I've gotten more into this over the past year, even just the process of doing that, like in the middle of the day, if I needed a snack where, maybe I used to go to a bag of pretzels or, some sort of what's supposed to be a, healthy protein bar or something, which really, they honestly don't exist. If you actually make the effort, and you go and you get an apple, you get some nuts, you get some cheese. Number one, you're not going to be hungry anymore. You're going to be satiated, and your you're going to feel better. You're not going to have a spike and a crash, and your body's going to learn, really learn to desire those foods. And that's one of the things I was talking about. Dr. Hemingway, having him on my show a couple of weeks ago. And he was talking about the gut-brain axis and how really there's bacteria in your gut, bad bacteria that is fed by, these foods like eating Doritos and junk food, that it'll send signals to your brain to say, send me more of that junk food, so they can proliferate more. And if you start to, starve out that junk food, starve out the bacteria that's fed, by artificial sweeteners or sugars or whatever, and you start feeding the bacteria with real food. Maybe you're someone, and I have this discussion with my wife all the time because, she's, she doesn't like vegetables as much as I do. Let's leave it at that. But I'm like, well, you need to start eating some of these things, and your body will it'll start to crave it. And it's crazy. That's how it works. And even like with little kids, if you can get, like my daughter, she'll eat anything because we've always just fed her everything. We've never, put it out there. We've never made eating, broccoli different than eating rice. We never put a bad spin on eating vegetables or eating or trying to frame it up to the kid. Just eat this much more and you can get this treat. Where it's you just eat it because that's what you're supposed to eat. I think that is a good path forward. And to kind of close this this circle here on supplements fill the gaps because due to farming techniques that maybe have been successful in creating a shit ton more food in that way. I think we could argue on even if that's really necessary. Not me. I think you and I would agree. I think we could argue with other people, but because of these farming techniques, like the nutrients in fruits and vegetables, and then obviously we're feeding it to cattle. It's dropping the nutrient potency of our food down. So if you compare eating an apple from the 1940s to an apple today, it might have 10% of the same nutritional value. And you're not going to go out likely, and it's probably not very appealing to do. You're not going to eat 10 apples. So yes, eat the apples, still continue to eat apples. You're still getting good, quality nutrition from it. But there's going to be gaps that need to be filled by supplements.
Yeah, I agree completely. And you should always try to go for the most sustainably raised foods, right? You want to avoid the stuff that's been sprayed with the atrazine or the Roundup. You want to go for grass-fed, grass-finished meat. And not that I think grain-fed is necessarily bad, but the fatty acid profile inside grass-fed, grass-finished meat is going to be a lot better. And kind of to what you were saying earlier, when you eat more of natural foods, you're going to crave more natural foods. And I definitely found that when I was carnivore, that when I ate meat, I tended to crave more and more meat, right? And as I've reintroduced fruits and different stuff like that, I found that I have a craving for those as well. And fun fact about oranges as well, and why I love oranges so freaking much. They're actually one of the most satiating foods out there. And you look at just a regular orange, if you grab something like that rather than going for a sugary pop or, the thing of pretzels, it has a very unique taste and it's very filling. And it's not, it's not going to give you this ridiculous spike in blood sugar because there's enough fiber in it. But I just, I don't know. I love eating fruits. And it's something that I largely missed when I was eating carnivore. And this is why I try to tell people, don't do carnivore. And if you don't want to do keto or you don't think it's going to be sustainable, don't do that, because fruits and vegetables are a very, very great part of the diet that I don't think people should avoid just because they're scared of bumping up their insulin or they think carbs are bad. So that's kind of where I think some of like the keto zealotry goes wrong. Like I said, these foods are very, very great foods and they're very nutrient dense and they're very satisfying. And not only that, food is meant to be enjoyed, right? We're supposed to sit down with those that we love and enjoy a meal and put the phones away. And I'm just as guilty of not doing this as anybody else. But I really like what you said about eating with your daughters, that you don't tell her, eat this so you can have this. You just say, you sit down and you enjoy the food with her. And you don't try to teach her any necessarily bad food habits, or at least it's kind of what I'm understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another thing, just if more people would learn how to cook, you talk about enjoying food and sitting down with your family. And I mean, that's something we've done with our daughter. I mean, and she loves being in the kitchen. She loves helping out, and she's actually, getting decent with it. And, we have a garden, and, she's 6 years old now, almost 7. But when she was like 4 years old, she'll be, tasting the herbs in the garden and being like, oh, this is basil. And it's like when you're a little kid starting to learn the tastes of food, and we'll just like let her experiment with stuff too. And it might taste like garbage, but that's how you start to learn, you develop your palate and things like that. But yeah, if more people cooked, I mean, that's one thing that I was kind of hoping that when we had this, these lockdowns, that more people would develop that, but I don't think that really happened. I mean, I think a lot of people just ordered out, and I don't understand why people just are afraid to really try to cook. I've never really been able to really put my finger on. I guess it's just watching learned behavior. Maybe they had parents that couldn't cook. But it's just something that I think it's great, number one, as a family, to learn how to do that together. And you see where your food comes from. You see what you're putting in your food. I just think it's a great value-based thing to be doing.
Yeah, and kind of like you were saying there earlier, your daughter really enjoys being in the kitchen and cooking with you guys. And I find that with my fiance and I cook stuff together, that's a very enjoyable experience. And just saying that, you would be like, you guys enjoy cooking together, but like when you make a beautiful dish of something that you've been thinking about all week, and you get to sit down and enjoy it, and maybe have a glass of whiskey or maybe a little bit of wine, or just something that you both made together, and being able to sit down and enjoy that is just a very, very wonderful experience. And I truly do think our bodies are kind of wired for that sort of experience, that we're supposed to sit down and enjoy food in the presence of others, because we are tribal creatures and we do like being around other people. So I think having healthy habits around eating is a very, very good thing as well. And like I said, it kind of seems like you employ that behavior in your own life and with your family.
Yeah, and it's not like we don't ever go out to eat.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, but you notice a difference. Like honestly, like once you start to like wean off going out to eat more, and you do go out, and you maybe you do get something that's fried, and who knows what it's fried in. It's probably fried in some terrible stuff. Yeah. When you eat it, you feel a difference. But I think that's kind of the first step to really taking ownership of what goes in your body, and just starting to understand how food makes you feel. Is just the next time you go out to dinner, just think about like before that meal, how excited you are, think about what you ate, and think about how you felt after, and compare that to cooking for yourself at home. It could, I mean, even just it could be a simple simple lunch that you make. I know you make a lunch pretty much every day that you have at work, like bison meat or beef, but the difference between I'm sure you feel great after eating that. Yeah. And it powers you through the day. So, I mean, I think people get overwhelmed. I was talking to someone recently on Twitter, They were commenting on one of my podcasts, and they were saying, that they've realized that they need to start, taking some things more seriously with what they put in their body. And people get overwhelmed, like they have to change everything overnight. Right. And I mean, I honestly think that's like the worst thing you could, from my perspective.
Right.
I'm sure for some people it works to do a crazy diet like that. But I think for a lot of people, I mean, just making small changes, even before you change what you're eating, just start looking at the label of ingredients. Just start looking at it. Google them, look them up. What is this? What does it do? What's happening? And as you start to learn, you'll be like, why the hell am I eating this shit? Why am I putting this in my body? Why is this in here? Who decided to put this in here? This is terrible.
Yeah, it's funny. I would make my fiance coffee on some mornings, and we would get the Starbucks white macchiato chocolate coffee creamer. And I remember one of the first ingredients on it is soybean oil. It's like, why is that in there? Why do you have to have soybean oil in coffee creamer? Why can't it just be like milk? And I mean, she's not as health conscious as I am, and that's fine. I'm not dogging her for anything like that, but like, why can't it just be like milk, sugar, flavoring, and that's it? Why do you have to put soybean oil in there? And if you have to have some kind of oil, why couldn't it be like coconut oil, avocado oil, some less bad, some not so junk oil? Because avocado oil is not that bad, coconut oil is not that bad, even like butter and stuff like that, I don't think it's all that bad, or most of the animal fats. When you start getting into these machine lubricants, which is what they are, it's like, why the hell are you putting this shit in your body? This isn't meant for you to eat.
Well, it's funny when you say that, with calling them machine lubricants, that just kind of like made a light bulb go off. I remember hearing an interview, what's Tom, what the heck's his last name? Tom something. He's one of the founders of the Quest bars. They have the
Tom Bilyeu
bars. Yeah, Tom Bilyeu. And he was talking about when they were starting that company. And honestly, I used to eat Quest bars all the time. I'm not a big fan of them anymore because I try to avoid sucralose, and maybe sucralose in almost all of them. But he was talking about, in order to even just make those bars without high fructose corn syrup, they had to build all new machines, because in order for the consistency of the bar to be able to even form into a bar, it had to have so much of this junk into it. So even to change it out to that degree, to remove a lot of that junk, the machines they could buy, or maybe a lot of these bars are made, like these companies will share a facility and just pump it out and put their branding on. They had to change the machinery. They had to recreate the whole process on how you make a protein bar. And I wish they would do it again without sucralose. But it's just one of those things. Like, why is this stuff in here? Well, maybe one of the reasons it's in some of this stuff is for machine reasons, for lubrication purposes. I don't know.
Wow. Yeah. I actually never thought about it that way either. Nina Teichels is one of the people I used to listen to a lot. And she was the one that kind of put that idea in my head that these vegetable oils literally are machine lubricants. That's what they were used for before they were put into our foods, because they figured out, oh, well, this has similar texture and consistency as butter, and we have all this machine oil from using it in machines. Well, why don't we just start selling it to people? So voila, you got Crisco now. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Because I got a few questions for you.
Just made me think of something. Like
go ahead,
you were talking about the coffee creamer, and I'm sure they're pumping it through tubes to put it in the bottles. Yeah, maybe it makes it flow better through the tube with that soybean oil in it. Honestly, that's the type of shit that they're feeding to us, and it's a reason so their process works better and maybe saves them more money. And we could get on a rant about capitalism and why that type of stuff happens, and how really more free market capitalism could solve that problem. But that's maybe an episode next time. Down the road.
Yeah, dude, I got you. Yeah, and I completely agree, because people, like I said, people should not be eating this kind of stuff. So I guess what would be kind of like maybe 2 or 3 things that you would recommend to anybody who's just looking to get started on improving their health? And let's just say you're literally taking just an obese person who just eats whatever's put in front of them, but they're willing to start making some small changes. What would you tell that person to start improving their health?
I would tell them to listen to this podcast. Number one.
Oh, geez. I'll be right under this beard here in a minute.
seriously, I mean, I think one thing is to educate yourself, be it listening to podcasts like this. Just like I talked about before, kind of in that same vein, is just starting to understand what's in your food, looking at labels, starting to educate yourself on what some of this stuff is. And then kind of the second step to that is just like take one meal a day. Let's make one meal a day something that is whole foods. Or maybe you pick 1 day or 2 days a week where you eat nothing but whole foods. It can be really challenging to do. So maybe it's easier to start with just the one meal a day for some people. What I like to do every morning, I start with eggs and an avocado most of the time, unless I don't have a ripe avocado, then my whole day's thrown off. But something as simple as that, or like something, what you do, Kyle, with the, a lot of people like to meal prep. So you can meal prep a clean and healthy lunch of some ground meat with some onions and peppers and things like that. And then, I mean, the third thing is get outside, even just, let the sun hit your body, and also get some cardio in. Doesn't have to be running. Ideally you want to get to the point where you're doing some cardio, where you're lifting weights, but someone starting at zero, I mean, get outside, go for a walk every day. Doesn't have to be an hour-long walk for 10 minutes. I mean, when I had COVID, was that 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was, as soon as I felt, good enough to get off the couch, which was like 2 days, so it wasn't that long, I was like, I got to get outside. I got to get outside and walk. And I would just walk around my block, I mean, how much better I felt after doing that. I mean, it was amazing, the difference that made. So that's what I would suggest.
Nice. Yeah. And I really couldn't agree with those 3 recommendations anymore. I'm a huge advocate for walking just because it's so low impact and so sustainable. And for me, a lot of people like intermittent fasting, and I used to do it. I no longer do it, but getting a meal first thing in the morning, I think really sets my day personally. It sets it off on the right foot. And I always try to get a pretty big meal because for me at least, I'm going to eat less throughout the day if I get a nice big bolus of protein and carbohydrates and fats together. I really kind of have just a big meal of pretty much everything, whether that be like ribeye, a sweet potato, or some peaches, or, some coffee with some good creamer in it or something like that. I try to get a decent meal in the morning just because I feel like that's going to keep me more satiated throughout the day. And, obviously your mileage will vary. Whatever works for you. If you're kicking ass, keep doing that. But as you kind of alluded to, you said your day's kind of off if you don't have ripe avocado. But yeah, I mean, if I don't have my meal like prepped and ready to go first thing in the morning, or like I can't cook my meal in the morning, I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Like this, I can't do this. So every single morning, even on weekend mornings, I'm still up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, whipping something up in the kitchen. And when you get into the habit of it, it's like second nature. You don't even realize you're doing it. You're just there. And personally, I love cooking in the morning. It's just me and the dogs hanging out, and I'm making whatever I'm going to make. So if you don't have anything else that you kind of want to add on there, John, I'll ask you a few more questions when you get on out of here.
Sure.
Cool. All right. John, what does liberty look like to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think my definition of liberty, not the definition of liberty, but how you can attain liberty has changed in the past few years for me. I used to be a lot more focused on political means, and we need to vote for this person, or vote for that person, or do this or that. I think a lot of liberty and freedom really comes from our own choices that we make. And, a lot of people end up locking themselves in their own mental prison based on what they decide to do, based on the job they take. They end up either complaining about sitting in a cubicle for 9 hours. I've been there. I mean, I'm not criticizing anyone. I've done the same thing. You're complaining about being in a cubicle for 9 hours a day, and you put yourself there. I mean, I made decisions that put me in that cubicle. So figure out the life that you want to have, And if the life you want to have is just sitting on a beach doing nothing, you might want to reevaluate why you want to have that life. And if you really want to have that life, because you probably don't want to have that life. You'll probably get sick of it pretty quickly without having any challenges or any obstacles to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I guess that's how I would define it.
Nice. Yeah. What does health look like to you?
Health is, I think, progress. Kind of what I talked about earlier in the show. We're kind of sold this bill of goods that as we get older, we regress. I try to get better every day. And I mean, I'm almost 40 years old. I'm 39, and I'm healthier now than I was, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Every year I try to get healthier, and obviously I'm going to reach a point where that's, it's obviously that's not going to continue. It'll just become a battle with, maintaining, a healthy life within the lifespan. But I think it's progress. So many things, they talk about with like depression, and, to kind of tie it back to what I was talking about, being stuck in maybe a cubicle job that you hate. So many things in life, if you don't overcome obstacles, if you don't give yourself strenuous activities, if you don't achieve things, you're going to feel stuck. And I think health is the same thing. If you're not challenging yourself and, seeing a measurable difference in your performance, be it, lifting more weight, be it maybe it's a number on a scale, maybe it's, a number of inches you want to lose around your weight, maybe it's some amount of weight you want to lift, maybe it's just you just want to feel a certain way. I think you got to be able to have some measure of progress in your life.
All right. Well, yeah, that's a different answer than I was kind of expecting, and different one that I've got from anybody that I've asked that question to. Yeah, I really like that though. That's, you definitely need to be making progress towards something. And I definitely know for me right now, my main focus is outside of politics, as I was kind of talking about a little bit today on Twitter with one of your show with one of the fellows from Lions of Liberty. But yeah, my focus is so far outside of politics currently. And yeah, I may talk about political stuff, but no, I'm getting married in 5 months. Jesus, 5 months. I'm working on building a better body and putting up a little bit more weight, and I'm very, very happy at that. I'm working on building up this show, and yeah, politics is an interesting conversation, but I don't think it's anything that we should completely staple our lives around. So I know it's a little bit of a side tangent, especially to health stuff, but yeah, man. Where can everybody find you, and what do you got cool coming up in the near future?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at John Odermatt. You can find the podcast on the Lions of Liberty Network feed or on the Finding Freedom podcast feed. And, as we've talked about a little bit, like my show has shifted almost entirely since I started it. It used to be all criminal justice. And then recently, actually, when I had you on, Kyle, that was really the first show of kind of a shift towards health. It's not exclusively health, but just kind of a shift to incorporating more, talk about health and lifting weights and gut health and supplementation and eating whole foods. But also on my show, I want to talk more about business, entrepreneurship, different things of that nature. So it's just kind of tailoring the show to what I'm interested in, what you were talking about. There's a time and a place for politics, but it's just not something that really lights me on fire at this moment. And to kind of tie into an episode that's coming up on my show, I don't know when this is going to air, but it's my show this week, which would be on June 9th. I am having on Michael Heiss, the founder of the Mises Caucus. Ooh. And it's already been recorded, and I think you all are going to find it pretty interesting. Michael really ends up saying that the thing that he thinks is going to be most important about the Mises Caucus, and I agree with him, is the community that's built and the ability of that community to decentralize and solve problems through decentralization. which I wholeheartedly agree with. And, that's one of the reasons I support the Mises Caucus, even aside from political goals. And I disagree with some of their tactics politically. I agree with some of their tactics, but I think that community of like-minded people is just so valuable. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely excited to check that out. This will be airing tomorrow, actually, so that would be 8th. So the day after that, everyone listening to this right now, make sure you go check out that show. Michael is a great guy. John's a great guy, and I really enjoy his show, and I really enjoy listening to Mike, especially when he's talking about the Mises Caucus and everything that's going on. Yeah, man, that's going to be an awesome show. But it's good to see you guys at Lions of Liberty, and I just want to say this before we get off air and for everyone else to hear, but that you guys are kind of stepping away from political stuff. I know Brian still kind of talks about the mainstream news stuff, which is cool, and whatever he wants to do there, and he also does like comedy stuff, but I just think it's really cool that we have libertarians expanding outside of libertarianism, because we could talk about political stuff, but it's like, well, what did you build? What are you leaving behind? And I hope that in the wake of this show that I'm able to leave people the tools to make themselves better people. And I think through your show, you've let people know not only how corrupt the government is, but you're doing something in a very, very similar vein. And I think Mark's doing something in his own respect in a similar fashion. And I'm sure Brian will even do something similar where, we're all trying to bring about something to make the libertarian space a better space, to not just be more people screaming at the sky. And I think we need more of that. We don't need more people parroting the same libertarian principle talking points. We need more people doing stuff. And part of the Mises Caucus community aspect is very, very essential, and kind of what I'm getting at here, because you have a community. It's not just this loose association of people. You have actual coalitions and different tribes, different networks in different areas that can, manifest and do different things that don't have to be political. So that shit just fascinates the fuck out of me, man.
Yeah. 100% agree with you, man. And you were one of the I would say one of the first ones. I think you really were, who really took a show that as a libertarian and just went off in a direction. And it's been inspiring to me, honestly. It's gave me the confidence to kind of do a similar thing. So I appreciate that, man.
I do. Well, I really appreciate it. And, that's, I think, probably one of the biggest compliments that you could give a podcaster is someone a podcast to know they encourage you to do something else with your podcast. So yeah, dude, hopefully this kind of has a ripple effect. And, we see a little bit more of the other sides of people, not just the fact that they're libertarians. I want to know what everybody does outside of that, because that's where we can really kind of build friendships from there. I just had Jacob Winograd on, and me and him literally talked about automotive stuff for like 45 minutes to almost an hour, and then the last like half hour of the show was like libertarian stuff. So it's not, once again, I don't want to be a one-trick pony. I'm a musician, I'm an athlete, personal trainer, mechanic, libertarian. I'm not one thing, and I don't want to just be one of those things. So I as cliche as it is, I kind of want to be the change I want to see in the movement. So I'm going to put it out there, and hopefully people kind of follow suit, and hopefully we all kind of build a better movement and see a little bit more freedom and liberty in our lifetime, man.
Yeah. And I was going to say we need more Yinzer podcasters, but we probably don't. We just need the current Yinzer podcasters, me and you. We need our audiences to grow, because the world needs more Yinzer.
Yeah, dude, for real. All right. Well, yeah, man, this was a really good time. We'll definitely do it again. So, if you just want to let everybody know one more time where they can find you, we'll close her out.
Yeah, Lions of Liberty, Finding Freedom. Check it out.
Cool. Links will be below. And until next time, everybody, rock and roll and take care.